At this season of the year, it's amazing to go outside at night. And if the skies are clear enough to be able to see the stars, the night before last, we'd realised that it was possible to see things that we don't normally see. And Charlene had read somewhere, was told that it was possible to see the International Space Station as it flies past us. And for 3 minutes just, the space station would be visible um, to the naked eye. Um, and so we went out, put the coats on because it was freezing, but it was a lovely clear night. And right from the east side of the rectory, we were able to see these lights. It just looked like a star, but the more that we looked, we realized it was moving and began to move quite fast just as it passed through the rectory here, or above the rectory. Um, Passed through the rectory, that would be some vision, wouldn't it? And we could see that it wasn't just like a star. You could see various lights that were shining and light reflecting off it, and you could see something of it, of its huge shape, even though we were so far away. Amazing, amazing view. But once it left our vision, we were able to keep looking up to the sky, and it's not just a blackness. It's almost like a plummy blackness. And you see the obvious stars, and you even try to make out some of the constellations. And then eventually you begin to see how the just lights of the stars grow in number. Impossible to count them. And I'm fascinated by that sense of, even though we think we know there's an end in sight in terms of the sky, it just goes on and on and on. And it makes me feel so small. And anything that makes me feel small is a good thing. But it makes me feel so small compared to everything that exists. There's something of that God was trying to say to Abraham. Yesterday, we realized that the first step was for Abraham to take the courage to step out and to leave his familiar things and to go to the place where God was preparing for him. And as that was happening, there's something else that God had to help Abraham deal with. Still in Genesis, just a couple of verses, or a verse from Genesis 15. God brought Abraham outside and said, "Look toward heaven and count the stars, if you're able to count them." Then he said to him, "So shall your descendants be." And he believed the Lord, and the Lord reckoned it to him as righteousness. You see, it's one thing to trust God whenever things, yes, are maybe exciting or difficult, uncomfortable, like Abraham having to move house. But that's just one level of trust that God requires of us. He also requires us to trust him in another way, almost in a way of faith. And so Abraham was taken outside one night, and he looked up the stars, and he says, "Count them." God said to him, "Count the stars." And the more that he looked, the more stars that appeared, until it was obvious that he couldn't count them. And God said to Abraham, "You see the same number of stars that are out there? That's how many of a number of the descendants that will be of you. Incredible. In other words, you'll never understand or appreciate or come to see all of the people that will come from you, Abraham. And not just because of blood connections, but you and I, if we're born again of the Spirit of God, we are part of that family of God through Abraham. And you see, that was going to be difficult because Abraham and his wife, they had no kids. They were an old couple. They didn't have any family. And therefore, to believe that God was going to provide them with such a huge family that the descendants could not be counted because there's so many, took another level of faith and courage. But we're told that Abraham believed. Now, it didn't mean that he had to have understanding, that he didn't have it all secure and sorted out and said, okay, I'm going to go with it. Because it was God that spoke, Abraham said, I believe you, God. I believe you, God, before and in front of my understanding of things and my capability of comprehending how this is going to happen. But God, because you have spoken, I'll believe you. And God described that statement of faith in a lovely way. God's reckoned unto Abraham that response was one of righteousness. I would love to be a person that every time God spoke, that I would silence my objections and my reasoning as to why not, and quickly and consistently and truthfully, with integrity, say, God, I will trust you. Despite my own confusions or not or understanding, I trust you because you're God. Let's pray. God our Father, I thank you that through Abraham's obedience and faith, he has made it possible for you to graft all of us into the life of your people and become members of your family. Today, may I live my life well so that I do the family name proud and bring glory to you. Amen. The skies are the handiwork of God, and they encourage us to see how big God promises can be. And if only we trust him, we will know the blessings of his generosity in life. See you tomorrow.